I adopted a lost alien girl. Years later, her real mother knocked on my door and asked to live with us.
Elendar 3 was never meant to last this long. The colony was built as a stepping stone, temporary infrastructure, atmospheric domes, synthetic fields to test botanical adaptability. But the interplanetary grid collapsed faster than supply chains could adapt, and now Elendar was nothing but fractured shelters, dead terminals, and rusted corridors buried in snow. Most of the population left when the support vessels stopped coming. Those who didn't were either too stubborn, too broken, or too hidden. Revan's soul stayed because leaving meant abandoning what little purpose he had left. Once a certified botanical cartographer, Revan had spent a decade traveling from colony to colony, mapping viable growth zones for off-world agriculture. After the collapse, his field was obsolete. So he found a place no one wanted, claimed a dome left behind, and started growing things again. Not for science, but for survival. His greenhouse sat on the outskirts of what had once been Quarter 3A, its ferroglass reinforced with insulated tarp, its hydro lines patched together with salvage tubing. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't even secure, but it worked. And more importantly, it was his. That morning it started like the others. He calibrated the nutrient tanks, skimmed algae buildup from the drip trays, and monitored the condenser coils that kept the dome from freezing over. It was below zero outside. Snow clung to the cracked solar veins overhead. Inside, the air was damp and warm, humid from root mist and condensation, smelling faintly of mint, soil, and industrial plastic. Revan moved slowly as he worked. Not because of age, he was only 47, but because everything he did now was deliberate. No wasted steps, no excess motion. The world had become quiet, and he adapted with it. He was tightening a pressure valve near the seedling rack when a flicker in the security monitor caught his eye. Motion, rear side, alleyway. His breath caught. He moved to the feed panel. The camera feed showed static, then a stuttering image. Someone, or something, small, hunched near the wall outside the dome's back access door. Too small to be a scavenger. Too still to be healthy. He hesitated. His first instinct was caution. There were stories, squatters faking injury to gain entry, stealing heat packs, stripping food. But the longer he stared at the image, the less likely that seemed. The figure wasn't moving at all, not pretending, not posturing. He grabbed his coat and moved. The wind outside slammed against him like a wall. He winced as cold bit into his face and neck, his boots crunching over frost-covered gravel. He rounded the corner. She was there, kneeling. She looked up at the sound, barely. Her head turned just enough to reveal a pair of lavender eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the back lamp. Her skin was silver blue, tinged purple at the edges, and her limbs were too thin for a child her size. She held something out in both hands, a cracked ration chip. No voice, no words, just the gesture. Then her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed. Revan rushed forward. No time for hesitation. She weighed almost nothing in his arms, cold, damp, rigid from the exposure. Her feet were bare. Her clothes, if they could still be called that, were a torn transit jumper, several sizes too big and soaked through. The fabric clung to her skin, which felt like metal left out in winter. No shoes, no gloves. Her body shook slightly, not from motion, but from some lingering reflex, like her muscles couldn't stop remembering the cold even after losing consciousness. He moved quickly, back into the dome, lock sealed behind him with a pneumatic hiss. He laid her gently on the heated mat near the radiator, peeled off the jumper carefully with gloved hands. Underneath, skin, sharp bones, no sign of major wounds, but bruises along her ribs, a scar on the left hip, maybe a burn. She was Therini or a hybrid. Revan had seen the species in previous colonies, known for their bioluminescent eyes, soft tissue physiology, low body fat tolerance. That explained the collapse. He wrapped her in layered thermal sheets, one arm under her back to raise her core temperature, the other brushing damp, white hair away from her temple. He didn't speak. There was nothing to say. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. The heat pads would keep her alive. Still, Revan didn't move far. He sat down against the wall, watching her carefully, waiting for any sign of waking. He dozed off once, startled back awake by the hiss of steam from the nearest hydro pipe. When he looked again, her eyes were open. She didn't scream, didn't panic. She just looked at him, unblinking. "You're safe," he said, voice steady. "You're inside. You're warm." She didn't answer, but her eyes didn't leave his face. He made a choice that night, quietly, without writing it down or speaking aloud. He wouldn't report her, wouldn't turn her in. There was no one to turn her into anyway. Not anymore. Whatever system used to keep track of alien miners had stopped pinging this sector long ago. So he fed her, boiled root broth, let her sleep near the radiator, built a cot in the lower grow room. She didn't speak for months. He didn't push her. In the evenings, she would curl near the nutrient lamps, eyes following the mist lines, watching how the roots shifted as the cycles flowed. He caught her mimicking his hand movements when he calibrated the valves. By the 4th month, she repeated a word. It wasn't in his language, but it was something. By the 6th, she spoke directly to him. "My name, Alinei." She said it slow, testing each syllable like a tool she hadn't used in years. Then, "Yours?" He paused. No one had asked in a long time. "Revan." "Soul. You can call me Soul if that's easier." "Soul." She nodded once and didn't ask again. 2 winters passed. Her body filled out, still thin, but no longer malnourished. She grew stronger, helped him around the greenhouse, even stitched patches on his old coat. She smiled occasionally, but never around strangers. Only him. He didn't try to be her father, but she acted like he was the only one she trusted. Sometimes she'd fall asleep against the wall while watching him work. Other times, she'd ask questions he didn't know how to answer. "Did you have a kid before?" "No." "Did you ever want one?" Silence. That winter, the storms came earlier. They had just reinforced the side panels when she pointed toward the upper monitor, eyes wide. Someone was outside, standing at the main hatch. He moved fast, checked the exterior feed. A woman, tall, wrapped in a ragged coat stitched from tarp and market banners. Long white hair whipped in the wind. Her skin violet, her eyes lavender just like Alinei's. Revan's pulse slowed, then quickened again. He opened the hatch. The cold surged in. Snow clung to her face. Her lips cracked from windburn. Her coat hung half open. Beneath it, skin, bare in places, wrapped in strips of thin cloth, meant more for modesty than insulation. She didn't speak. Behind him, he heard movement, light steps on the upper stair. "Soul." He glanced back. Alinei stood at the rail, looking down. Then the woman at the door finally spoke. "I've come for my daughter." Alinei didn't move. She looked confused. Her hands gripped the railing, but her feet stayed planted. Revan's instincts lit up. Something was wrong. Alinei didn't recognize her. The woman didn't react like a mother. She didn't cry, didn't reach out, just stood there, her voice flat. Tired, he stepped in front of the girl, placing his body between them without thinking. The woman didn't flinch. She looked at him instead of Alinei now. Her expression didn't change, but her voice softened just a little. "I don't want to take her. I don't even think I can anymore." Silence. "I came to ask," her voice caught, then steadied. "Can I stay?" Not as her mother, as someone with nowhere else to go. Behind him, Alinei hadn't moved, but he could feel her eyes watching, studying, trying to decide what this meant. He said nothing. He stepped aside. The woman, Naali, entered without a word. Her breath clouded in the warm air. She looked around briefly, then followed his gesture to the lower cot. She never tried to hug Alinei, never said, "I've missed you." She didn't even glance back. Later that night, Alinei sat near the radiator, silent. Her voice, when it came, was small, barely above a breath. "Will I still be yours if she stays?" Revan didn't answer with words. He handed her the blanket, sat down beside her, and stayed close until she fell asleep again. The next morning came gray and silent. Revan stood by the upper railing, coffee steaming in his hand, eyes locked on the lower level of the greenhouse where Naali slept. Or pretended to. She hadn't moved much in hours. Her knees were pulled up toward her chest beneath the thermal sheet. Her hands stayed close to her collarbone, elbows tucked in tightly, like she didn't trust the blanket to protect her. Alinei was already awake. She sat cross-legged on the heated floor panel near the water recycler, watching one of her carved scrap toys rotate slowly on its base. Her hoodie hung loose on her shoulders. She hadn't looked at Naali once. Revan had questions, 100 of them, but he wasn't ready to ask. Not yet. The woman had arrived from nowhere. No ID, no story, no breakdown about where she'd been, why she hadn't come sooner, or how she'd found them at all. Just a flat voice. "I've come for my daughter." Then, "Can I stay?" That tone still sat wrong with him. He moved back toward the counter and checked the food reserves. Enough for a week, maybe 10 days if they kept to roots and algae broth. He could stretch it if he traded tomorrow, but that would mean leaving both of them alone. That idea didn't sit right either. Naali stirred just before the lights auto-adjusted for the news cycle. Her eyes blinked open slowly. She didn't sit up right away, just looked at the ceiling like it wasn't real. When she finally stood, her movements were careful. She adjusted the patch coat over her shoulder, pulled the thermal blanket tighter around her waist, and walked barefoot to the corner where Revan kept a small basin and boiled rags. She washed her hands, her forearms, her neck. Then she glanced up at him. "You still haven't asked who I am." "I figured you'd say something when you were ready," Revan replied. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, more like surprise. She took a slow breath. "My name is Naali Velaroon. I was part of a refugee caravan from Theros sector during the third wave. The port record listed my daughter as missing during a transit collapse. That was 2 years ago." "I know." Revan didn't press. "Not yet." She stepped back toward the heating vents, drying her arms with the edge of the blanket. Her voice dropped slightly, less guarded now. "I looked. I asked every outpost between 6C and the Ridge Colony. I found a half-rotted trade receipt in Turna's Market last week. Someone there mentioned a girl with lavender eyes, quiet, wore a hoodie 2 sizes too big, always stayed close to a human man's food stall." Revan nodded once. That tracked. He'd gone to Turna's only twice in the last year. She must have followed the story back here. Alini still hadn't spoken. She shifted her toy again, then turned and walked upstairs without a word. Naali's eyes followed her. "She doesn't remember me," she said quietly. "She was half-conscious and frostbitten when I found her. No chip, no ID, no way to trace anyone." "I know." Silence again. Then Naali sat down on the steps, hands clasped between her knees. "I don't want to take her," she said. "I don't have anything. Not even a ration to my name. She looked at me last night like I was just some stranger at the door." Revan leaned against the metal counter. He studied her face, thin, wind-burned, eyes dark beneath the cheekbones. There was no lie in her expression, just fatigue and something else. "Guilt, maybe." "She asked me a question last night," he said. Naali turned to him slowly. "She asked if she'd still be mine if you stayed." That cut deeper than anything he could have expected. Naali's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. She blinked once, and her posture slouched in on itself. She was only 6 when we lost her. There was fighting at the transit port. Fires. We got separated. I thought maybe someone sold her." Her voice cracked on the last word. Revan didn't look away. "She never talked about before. Not once." "She probably doesn't remember," Naali said. "Or maybe she remembers too much." A pause settled between them again, long, brittle, almost too heavy to hold. Then Naali did something unexpected. She stood, pulled the blanket tighter around her chest, and moved toward the greenhouse sink. "Do you have any clean gloves? I can help with the seedlings." Revan hesitated. The request wasn't performative. She didn't say it for gratitude or forgiveness. It came out like someone who needed to be useful before she collapsed under the weight of uselessness. He nodded, pulled a pair of fabric gloves from the bin under the seed table, and handed them over. As she slid them on, her eyes flicked toward his just once. "You feed her," she said, quieter now. "You taught her how to grow things." She wasn't like that before. She learned fast. She must have felt safe. She moved to the mist tray and began adjusting the rows. Careful, practiced. She knew what she was doing. Not perfectly, but this wasn't her first greenhouse either. Upstairs, Alini sat by the corridor window, watching frost build up on the outer dome. Her hands were in her lap, her face unreadable. She heard them below, Soft voices, moving tools, the hiss of steam but didn't move. Her fingers curled around the fabric of her hoodie. This was her home. It had been for 2 years. And now the woman who called herself mother had shown up without tears, without gifts, without even a memory they both shared. But soul had let her in, which meant something. That night, Revan cooked a thin broth with root slivers and yeast strips. He handed Alenei her bowl first. She took it without a word, sat in her usual spot on the floor by the radiator. Naali sat across from her, knees pulled up, bowl in hand. No one spoke. Steam rose between them. Revan took his seat on the step. Alenei ate slowly, glancing up once, not at Naali, but at him. Then she spoke. Why didn't she come sooner? The question landed like a hammer. Naali's eyes didn't rise. She just stared in her bowl. Her voice, when it came, wasn't angry, just tired. I was looking, but I didn't always know how to look. And sometimes I didn't have the strength. That was all she said. Alenei looked down again. Later that night, Revan stood near the dome's inner window, watching the snow whip sideways outside. From behind, he heard Naali's voice again, close, just above a whisper. She doesn't have to call me anything. Revan turned slightly. I'm not here to replace what she chose. I just want her to have a chance to choose again. That night, no one slept well. But in the dim hours before morning, Alenei walked down the stairs quietly, carrying her blanket with her. She stepped past the heater, past Revan, past Naali, who lay curled on the lower cot, facing the wall. Alenei didn't say anything, but she draped her blanket over Naali's legs, then turned around and walked back up without a word. The next 3 days passed like fog. Inside the dome, the air stayed warm, humid, filled with the low hum of the water pumps and the occasional creak of expanding metal. Outside, snow thickened in unpredictable waves, burying the outer corridors and piling against the access locks. Revan had to clear the upper hatch twice, using a makeshift shovel fashioned from an old coolant scoop. Neither Alenei nor Naali asked where he went when he worked outside, and he didn't explain. That was how they functioned now, silent understanding in place of unnecessary words. But silence did not mean peace. Alenei no longer sat near the radiator during mealtimes. She'd take her bowl upstairs, crouch behind the broken thermal pipe, and eat with her back to the room. She spoke when spoken to, but only in monosyllables. Her face didn't show anger, but distance, carefully placed like insulation against the cold. Revan noticed, of course. He didn't press. She needed time. Naali didn't push either. She moved through the greenhouse quietly, helping where she could. She didn't complain about the work or the food, though her movements were slow from fatigue. She slept light, sometimes not at all. Once, Revan passed her late at night, standing by the water tanks, arms crossed, staring into the bubbling mist like she was trying to remember what quiet used to feel like. By the fourth morning, the rhythm changed. Naali stood by the herb tray, gently sorting dry root ends when she asked, "What's the dome's power source?" Revan looked up from the filtration unit. A buried solar array under the south mound. Pre-collapse. I've rerouted the excess to the lamp grid and valve regulators. You did that alone? He nodded. She looked around again. Her voice held quiet disbelief. You're not a mechanic. I adapt. Why stay here? She asked. This place is half buried. Market lines are weeks apart. If I hadn't heard about the girl, I wouldn't have come. Revan answered slower this time. I was here during the blackout. When the grids went dark, this dome still had power. The biocontrols were intact. I figured if the world ends, at least I'll have roots and warmth. She nodded but didn't smile. Did you lose someone? He paused. Yes. Partner. He didn't answer. She looked down at her hands. I lost my husband during the second wave. Power cell shortage. Our med unit couldn't charge. Revan didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Naali leaned forward, adjusted a vine collar that had grown too tight around its base. Her fingers were more careful than he expected. I thought he'd be the one to teach her things, she said softly. What to do with tools. How to boil water without melting the coil. He wanted a greenhouse too. She knows how to boil water now, Revan said. That made her pause. Later that day, Revan and Naali cleaned the condensation filter together. Alenei didn't join them. She stayed upstairs again, curled under the ceiling lamp with a sketch slate she barely touched. Revan watched her from below. Something was pulling tight around her. Grief, confusion, maybe both, but she wasn't ready to speak it out loud. That evening, during a lull between systems checks, Revan caught Naali standing near the stairwell, watching her daughter. "Does she remember any Tharini?" she asked. "She never spoke it to me," he said. Naali nodded. "It would have faded. She was young when we lost her, still forming sentences, still forgetting names. She remembered yours." Naali turned. "She said it in her sleep once. First winter here." Her eyes glistened. She blinked it back fast. "She used to say my name when she needed help tying her shoes." That night, something cracked open. Revan was calibrating the vent relays in the lower pipe chamber when he heard movement behind him. Not footsteps, breathing. Slow. Close. He turned. Naali stood there, barefoot again. Her coat hung loose over her shoulders. The inner thermal wrap tugged tighter across her chest. Her hair, still damp from washing, clung to her neck. She looked different, less guarded, but also more tired. "I'm not trying to take her," she said quietly. "I know. She's not the same child I lost. She's not. But I can't walk away now that I've seen her. I thought I could. I told myself I could just find her and leave. That would be enough. But I don't think I believe that." Revan lowered the calibration tool. "She needs stability." "She had that here," Naali said. "You gave it to her." Revan's voice was steady. "And now?" Naali hesitated. "I don't know if I can give her anything. I don't even know what I am to her now." Revan stepped closer. "Maybe let her decide." Her eyes searched his. Then came the question neither had dared ask. "Why did you take her in?" Naali asked, voice soft, nearly breaking. "Why keep her?" He thought about it. Really thought. "I found her outside." She was shaking, silent, holding out a cracked ration chip like it was a passport. She didn't beg, didn't cry. She just collapsed. I couldn't leave her there. And then the days passed, and she stayed. I didn't do it out of kindness. I did it because it was the right thing, and because she needed someone. And eventually, I needed her back. That was the truth. All of it. Naali looked down at her hands. She stepped closer, eyes fixed on the floor, her voice growing quieter. "I used to be strong. I had people who followed me, who listened to my voice when things fell apart. But I wasn't strong enough when it mattered. I let her vanish." Revan didn't interrupt. She looked up. "I want to help. I want to be here, but I don't want to damage what you've built with her. If that means sleeping on the floor and speaking only when spoken to, I'll do it. You don't need to beg." "I'm not. I'm surrendering." In the silence that followed, they both heard it, a soft, hesitant step behind them. Alini eyes stood in the corridor, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her face unreadable, but her eyes wet. "I don't want either of you to go," she said. Naali turned to her. Her voice faltered. "I thought you didn't remember me. I remember a smell. Your hair. A lullaby I can't finish." Alini eyes' voice trembled. "I remember being warm once and then not." Naali couldn't speak. Alini walked up and stopped halfway between them. "You don't have to be my mother right away," she said. "But you can stay." Naali dropped her gaze, swallowed hard. Revan didn't move. In that moment, the three of them stood in a broken colony dome held together by rust, heat, and quiet endurance. There was no ceremony, no music, just warmth, breath, and the long, slow beginning of something fragile being rebuilt. Together, the days that followed settled into something new. Not quite harmony, not yet routine, but no longer tension either. Revan noticed it first in the way Naali moved. She no longer walked on the edges of rooms, no longer stayed silent unless spoken to. She began rising early, before the heating cycle fully kicked in, tying her coat tighter around her waist, and quietly checking nutrient levels on the upper beds. She had a particular way of trimming the tall stalk herbs, precise, careful, like she was handling something delicate that had once bruised easily. Revan didn't comment on it. He just handed her sharper shears and moved on. Alini still spoke little, but she no longer avoided her mother. She started lingering nearby when Naali worked, watching her without words, eyes following her hands. She didn't join in, didn't help, but she watched, and that mattered. One morning, As steam drifted from the root trays, Naali held up a plant with split stalks and turned toward Revan. "You've been overwatering this one." Revan raised a brow. "I thought the tray was dry." "It's dry because the root system's choked." "See?" She pointed. "It's draining faster, not absorbing." "You worked AG beds before, back on Theros 4, long before the second wave. I trained under a human botanist who didn't think aliens could grow anything unless it sprouted lasers." Revan gave a short breath through his nose. Not quite a laugh, but close. She smirked. That too was new. Later, while Naali rewired the misting relay, Revan stepped into the storage corridor to inventory remaining power packs. When he came back, she was up on the hydro table, reaching to secure a loose pipe with one gloved hand, the coat falling back off one shoulder. She didn't seem to notice. He did. Not just the skin or the way her hips pressed against the metal grate beneath her knees, but how completely unguarded she was. No performance, no awareness, just movement, survival, work. He looked away quickly, said nothing. She didn't comment either. But that night, when the lights dimmed to their low cycle, Naali didn't go directly to the lower cot. Instead, she stood in the hallway just long enough for him to notice her there, silhouetted in the low orange glow of the dome's heating coils. She didn't come closer, but she didn't walk away either. Alini Eye, from her upper corner under the grow lamps, saw it, and though she said nothing, her eyes stayed open longer that night. On the 5th day, Revan made the run to Turner's Market. He didn't want to go, but food was low, and they needed fresh sealant strips and lamp stabilizers. He left after sunrise, armed with trade packs of dry herbs and 2 containers of powder protein. High value now, especially after the last dome collapse in Sector 9. He told Alini he'd be back before cycle close. She only nodded, her fingers curled around the edge of his coat, sleeve longer than usual. It was Naali who saw him off. "Be careful," she said, standing at the main hatch, hands tucked into her sleeves. "I always am. There are people out there who still believe alien women don't belong in human homes." Revan met her gaze directly. "They're right. This isn't a home. It's something better. No one belongs here unless they've earned it." Naali blinked slowly, then gave a faint nod. Not a smile. Not quite, but something warmer than silence. The walk to Turnus took 3 hours each way, half through snow-covered ruins, half along the disused tramway tracks that still echoed faint hums when the wind passed low. Revan made good trades, picked up extra filament sleeves, swapped a backup water coil for dried beans. But something shifted at the market. The older woman who usually traded blankets for herbs looked at him longer than usual. A man near the ration crates muttered something under his breath and turned away. Revan caught part of it. Figures. He always liked strays. He didn't react, not outwardly, but he walked faster on the way back. When he returned to the dome, snow clung thick to his coat and shoulders. Naali met him just inside the hatch, taking the load from his arms without asking. She moved more quickly now, purposeful, confident in the layout. Her presence no longer felt like a guest. Alini ran downstairs silently, then stopped 2 steps from him. She didn't speak, but the way her arms hovered near his coat said enough. "I'm fine," he said, brushing the frost from her cheek gently with his glove. "Made good trades." That night, over warm broth and dried rice, he told them what happened. Naali's jaw tightened. "They know you shelter us. They don't know who you are." "Not exactly." Alini looked between them. "They hate us." "Not hate," Revan said carefully. "They don't understand. And people who don't understand often speak like they do." Naali leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. "Are we in danger?" Revan met her eyes. "Not yet, but we need to be smart." Silence settled in. Then Alini, for the first time in days, spoke clearly. "Do I have to leave?" "No," Revan said without hesitation. "You're not going anywhere." Then Naali's voice came, quieter. "Neither am I." And that, in the stillness of the heated dome, became something unspoken but solid. A decision. A line drawn. This was their home now, and whatever came next, it would not be fear that tore them apart, but something earned. Chosen. Together. The frost didn't let up. It coated the outer dome like a second skin, ice crawling up the seams, turning the world outside into a dull blue haze. Inside, the greenhouse hummed on. Vines twitched under the heat lamps. Mist dripped from suspended tubes. But the quiet felt different now. Tense, too still, like the warmth wasn't enough to stop something cold from creeping in. Revan moved carefully that morning. He'd slept less than usual. His back ached from the floor coil where he dozed after double-checking the intake pumps overnight. He kept his hands busy, trimming root bulbs, rotating compost gel, tightening a cracked hinge on the south-facing valve. But his thoughts drifted. The market wasn't going to ignore them anymore. Someone had followed him after the last trade. Not close, not confrontational, but present, watching. And now, even when he moved inside the dome, he felt the weight of imagined eyes, like they'd passed some invisible point where what happened inside this structure no longer belonged only to them. Upstairs, Aleni sat by the water tube outlet, arms wrapped around her knees. Her hair was unbrushed. She hadn't eaten yet. She was staring, not at anything in particular, but through it all. Revan climbed the stairs quietly and crouched beside her. "You haven't said much today." She didn't answer. He tried again, gently. "Want to help me calibrate the top lamps later? I need someone with small hands." Still nothing. Finally, she looked at him. Her eyes were swollen, tired. She said she wouldn't take me. "But what if someone else tries?" Revan exhaled through his nose. Sat beside her. "They'd have to get past me first. What if someone says I don't belong here? Then they'd be wrong." She didn't look convinced. "Do I look like her?" she asked suddenly. He studied her face, pale lavender skin, fine bone jaw, soft white lashes. "You have her eyes. That's all. She walks like you when she's tired. You sleep like her too, curled up too small, like you're trying to disappear." Aleni looked down. Her voice dropped. "She's kind, but I don't know her. I don't remember anything about her that feels like me. You don't have to decide anything yet." She hesitated. "I already did." "What do you mean?" Her eyes met his now. Clear. Heavy. "You're my home." Revan didn't speak. He just reached over and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. Downstairs, Naali worked silently. She had taken to cleaning everything twice, rechecking power cables, reweighing water reserves, re-clearing dust filters that didn't need clearing. Her sleeves were rolled high. The thermal wrap on her legs had been replaced with stitched scavenger pants Revan had given her. They fit badly, but moved better. Her face had changed, less sunken, more focused, but the stress in her shoulders hadn't faded. Revan came down later and joined her at the panel rack. "They'll talk more," she said without looking up. "They'll say we're a problem." "They've already said it. Then we should be ready." "For what?" She turned toward him. "For someone deciding to make it their business." He nodded once. She could tell he was already planning. "I've reinforced the hatch," he said. "Rerouted the backup battery, so it doesn't hum when active. If they come, they'll hesitate." Naali lowered the tool in her hand and sat on the bench. Her tone shifted. "What if they don't need to come in?" He looked at her. "What if all they need to do is convince Aleni she shouldn't be here?" Revan's stomach tightened. That night, they ate together, quiet, close, bowls in hand. No words, just presence. After, Revan boiled water and cleaned the surface filters alone. When he came back to the main chamber, Aleni was already asleep near the heating coil, curled in her blanket. Naali stood behind the divider, staring through the mist. "She's afraid of being taken. Not by me, by the idea of me." Revan walked over. They stood in silence for a moment. "She doesn't hate you," he said. "She doesn't trust me. She doesn't trust the idea of change. I'm part of that change." Revan turned toward her. "So am I." She looked at him differently then, like seeing him for the first time as more than the man who saved her daughter. As someone choosing all of this, day by day, with no reward but peace. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "Why live like this? In this dome, with people who bring you trouble?" "Because you're not trouble," he said simply. She stepped closer, voice low. "I don't have a claim to her anymore. I'm not asking for that. But I want a reason to be here. One that isn't just the cold." He looked down at her hands, fingers curled slightly, one thumb rubbing a patch of worn skin on her wrist. "Do you want to stay because of her?" he asked. "Or because of me?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, She reached up and gently touched his chest, just above where the thermal seams met. Her voice dropped into a whisper. I don't want to leave either of you. Revan's breath caught. Her hand stayed there for a second longer, then dropped. Neither of them moved to close the space between them. Not yet, but something had shifted. Later, long after the lights dimmed, Revan sat by the old generator console alone. His mind churned, not with plans, but with questions. How long could this last? How long before whispers became knocks? How long before someone decided it was their job to undo what he'd built? And if that day came, what would he be willing to do to protect them? He didn't know the answer yet, but he knew this. He would not let this place, this fragile, patchwork sanctuary, be taken by anyone. Not without a fight, not without choice, not without love. The tension didn't come like a storm. It came like a question asked softly by the wrong person in the wrong place, loud enough only for a child to hear. It was the 7th day since Revan had gone to Turner's Market. Supplies were holding. The greenhouse systems remained stable. Alinei had even begun to speak more, returning to her usual chores without being asked. She hummed while she cleaned the grow lamp housings that morning. Quiet, uneven notes, but a sound nonetheless. Naali watched her from the lower floor, crouched beside the hydro feed line, rinsing a cracked reservoir valve. Her fingers paused mid-scrub as she listened. Upstairs, Revan re-threaded a strip coil and glanced down, hearing the humming too. It was the kind of sound that didn't belong in a dome still haunted by the cold. It meant progress, healing. But by mid-afternoon, the atmosphere shifted. Alinei returned late from her walk, one of the short ones Revan allowed, down the cleared corridor to the old water tanks and back. No further. She usually took 15 minutes. Today it took 40. When she came in, her hoodie was damp with melted frost. Her eyes were dry, but her cheeks were red, not from cold, something else. Her lips were tight, hands stiff at her sides. She walked past Revan without a word and climbed to her cot in the upper chamber. Revan noticed immediately. He gave her space. 10 minutes, then 20. Then he went up. She sat on the cot, knees hugged to her chest, her drawing slate untouched beside her. He crouched beside her, voice calm. What happened? She didn't answer at first. Her eyes stayed fixed on the wall across from her. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet and sharp. Someone stopped me. From the market camp. I didn't know them. Revan's jaw clenched. What did they say? Alinei turned toward him slowly. They asked if I was still living with that man and the alien woman. Then they laughed and said, Does he make you share his bed too? Revan went still. His breath left him like a slow leak in a pressure tank. Not from shock, but from the way it hurt to hear her say it out loud. Not because it was obscene, but because it planted something poisonous in her. He reached out, gentle, deliberate. You know that's not true. She nodded. I know, but her voice cracked. I didn't know what to say. I just ran. Revan's hand stayed on her shoulder. You did right. You came home. She looked up at him, her eyes wet now, trembling. Why do they think that, Soul? Why do they think you do that? Because they don't understand what we are, he said. Because people need to invent reasons for what they're afraid to see. A man living with a girl who isn't his, a woman who isn't human. They don't want to imagine it's just love. Safety. Choice. She took a long, shaky breath. Then another question, even quieter. Do you love her? Revan didn't answer immediately. He sat down beside her on the cot. Yes, he said finally. But not like they mean it. Not the way they twisted it. I care about her. I want her here. Just like I want you here. That's not wrong. Alinei wiped her face. She doesn't know how to talk to me. She's trying. But you have the right to be unsure. Is she going to stay? That's up to her. And you. A silence settled. Then a whisper. I want her to try harder. Revan nodded. I'll tell her. But he didn't have to, because Naali had heard it all. She stood halfway up the stairs, one hand on the railing, unmoving. Her face was blank, but her throat worked like she'd swallowed something sharp. Revan met her eyes. She came the rest of the way up on her own. Alinei didn't look at her. Naali knelt beside the cot. Not too close. You shouldn't have had to hear that, she said quietly. And I should have been here sooner. You said you were looking for me. I was. But you didn't come. Naali looked down, took a breath, then looked her daughter in the eye. I was afraid. Of what? That you wouldn't want me anymore. Aliniai's voice cracked. You left. I didn't leave. I lost you. I lost everything. I spent months searching, then years just surviving. And by the time I heard about you again, I thought maybe you'd already chosen someone else. I thought if I showed up too late, I'd only ruin what you had. You kind of did. Naali nodded. I know. That's why I haven't touched you. Haven't called you my daughter. Haven't told you to come close. Because I don't want to steal what he gave you. But I want to be something Alinii, even if it's just someone who gets to be near. Alinii looked at her mother for a long time. Then, slowly, she sat up, pulled the blanket from her lap, and offered it outward. Naali hesitated, then took it. Aliniai's voice came low. You can stay near, but you have to stay. Naali didn't cry. Not fully, but something inside her dropped. Softened. I will. That night, Revan didn't eat. He stood by the far window, watching the distant market lights flicker against the snow. Behind him, Naali approached, quiet, unhurried. They'll say worse things, she said. Next time, it won't be a whisper. It'll be a report. A name called into a scanner that still works. A lie told because someone's uncomfortable. I know. I'm not afraid for me anymore. I'm afraid for her. Revan turned toward her. You said you wanted to be near. Are you ready to protect her? Yes. And me? Yes. Then he reached out, hand resting gently on her waist, letting the moment linger. And for the first time, she leaned in on her own. Their foreheads touched, no kiss, no sound. Just stillness. Shared breath. Shared burden. Shared decision. Tomorrow would bring questions. But tonight, they had no more doubts. 3 months later, the dome was still standing. The frost still came each night, curling around the seams of the outer walls, but inside, the warmth held. The grow beds thrived. The mist system no longer sputtered. A new batch of roots had taken hold, and sprout tubes lined the upper corridor like soft green veins pulsing with life. The dome had changed, but not in any dramatic way. Not in a way outsiders would notice. It was quieter now, yes. More layered. A home lived in by 3 people who no longer question each other's place. Revan stood at the edge of the south hydro table, sleeves rolled past his elbows, hands deep in nutrient gel. His hair had grown longer. A small scar now ran across the side of his wrist from a cracked pipe repair the week before. His face looked tired, but not hollow. Behind him, Naali crouched beside the spice vines, her long white hair tied into a loose braid that reached halfway down her back. She wore a proper thermowork jumpsuit now, patched in several places, sleeves rolled up past her elbows. Her hands moved with purpose, confidence. Alinii sat perched atop the main pipe housing, legs swinging slowly as she peeled dried leaf husks into a small bin. Her hair had grown longer, too. It now framed her face in uneven, deliberate cuts she had trimmed herself with Revan's old grooming knife. She wore her hoodie still, but underneath was a newer shirt, one Naali had stitched from scavenged linen and old sleeves. They looked like a family, not by blood or law, but by something harder to define and harder to break. Soul, Alinii said, pointing a leaf at him like a warning. You promised you'd show me how to test salinity today. I did, Revan said, without looking up, and I will, as soon as I finish not flooding this table. You said that yesterday, too. Yesterday, I nearly flooded the table. Naali smirked. He's got you there. Alinii groaned. Ugh, you're both turning into each other. Impossible, Revan muttered. I still enjoy silence. Naali leaned against the metal crate and raised an eyebrow. That's not what you said last night. Revan paused. His hands froze in the gel. Alinii blinked. Wait, what? Naali smiled. Subtle, dangerous. Nothing, Revan said quickly. Alinii narrowed her eyes. That didn't sound like nothing. Naali stood, brushing her palms on her thighs. Maybe I'll tell you when you're older. Revan shot her a look. She shrugged. It had become like this lately. Light teasing, dry glances exchanged across work tables, silent touches passed in motion. They didn't sleep apart anymore. Naali's cot had been folded and stored. Some nights, she curled into Revan's side before the lights even dimmed, her breath warm against his throat. Other nights, she simply lay there, back to him, hand resting on his arm until sleep took them both. No one talked about what it was. It just was. And Alinei had never asked again if she was going to be taken. One day, she simply stopped sleeping with her boots beside her cot. It was Naali who spotted the figures on the ridge. Two strangers, midday, walking along the broken tramway with satchels slung over their backs. Both humans, both male, faces covered against the wind. They looked down at the dome once, paused, then kept moving. Revan watched them from the window, arms crossed. Scouts. Too clean, Naali said. Merchants, maybe, or desperate. Revan didn't reply, but no one came down the path. No one knocked. No one asked questions. Their dome, it seemed, had been quietly removed from the conversation. Rumors only lived where people stayed long enough to repeat them. And those who remained on Elendar, 3 had their own problems. Later that night, Revan sat with a mug of steeped root tea while Naali repaired a torn elbow seam on Alinei's work shirt. Alinei dozed near the lamp, curled under a thermal sheet with her hands tucked beneath her chin. Do you think she'll ever want to leave? Naali asked. Revan didn't look up. Eventually, maybe. You okay with that? I want her to leave because she's ready, not because she's scared. Naali nodded. A long pause. Then, and me? He turned toward her. You stay as long as you want. She didn't smile. Instead, she stood, crossed the floor, and sat beside him, close, warm, real. Her shoulder brushed his. He leaned into her without thinking. Then I'm not going anywhere, she said. Outside, snow began to fall again. Soft, silent. Inside, the warmth held. And for the first time in a long time, no one wondered when it would end. It already had. This quiet, flawed, and chosen was the new beginning.